Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today we're going to be reacting to a video by Ruined Leon called How White People Respond to Reparations Won't Get Black People Money. I have strong feelings when it comes to race and race relations in this country. To me, it is so crazy how it is so accepted and even celebrated to actually be racist towards white people in this country. And at the same time, ask those white people who had nothing to do with slavery to give you money because your descendants were slaves. That shit is crazy to me, but I'm not gonna talk too much about it. At the beginning, we're gonna watch the video and then I'm gonna give you guys my honest opinion on what I see as a terrible state of affairs here in the United States at this point when it comes to race relations.
Do you remember the woman who let you know that using the word lazy to describe a black person is the same as calling that same black person the N-word?
10 ways you say the N-word without saying the N-word. If you use any of these terms or phrases in reference to black people, you are just as racist as the person that actually uses the N-word. Here are the words.
Okay.
Thug.
Black people are racist.
Yeah, so I'll get that one because I see it a lot on Twitter where there are some people that use it instead of using like black people, they'll use like thug or youths or any variation of shit like that. And it's kind of like, just say it's black people, bro. Don't be like underhanded about this shit. We know what you mean. Like he said, black people are racist. Black people call each other thugs all the time.
Ghetto.
Black people are racist.
Welfare
You know what? I was going to say something, but I'm going to just let her finish.
queen.
Black people are racist.
Lazy.
Black people are racist.
Race baiter, race grifter, threatening, angry, dangerous.
Black.
Yeah, those are all words that black people use against each other. Lazy, how is that racist against black people? I don't understand. Not only black people are lazy, like everyone has, there's a lot of lazy white people. Like every group of people has the propensity to be lazy. Every race has its hardworking, which are the majority of the race, and then it has its lazy people. How is you calling a black person who is, you visually see them and say, motherfucker, you lazy? How is that racist? And I'm assuming she means only if it comes from white people, because if it's other black people, you can't be racist, right? So if a white person calls a black person lazy because they are being objectively lazy, then that's fucking racism. Make it make sense, please.
Black people are indeed racist. Do you also remember that woman saying that the only way to prove that you're not a racist is to give black people money on Juneteenth?
Number 1, invest in anti-racism.
Buy things. Of course. Buy. Invest in her course. Because remember, she has a course on how to dismantle all that anti-racism that you have inside. Well, you'll be delighted to know, if your memory is that strong and you hate the fact that you had to hear something that's stupid, that she's back again to let you white evil people know the way you respond to reparations for the poor, disenfranchised, marginalized, desperate African Americans in the year 2024. Madam, take it away.
Here's how most white people respond to the idea of reparations for African Americans.
I can't wait to be informed.
No one alive today was ever enslaved,
True.
and no one alive today was ever a slave owner.
True.
That's something I would typically say.
This is ridiculous. We're not giving away free money just based on race. Every culture has some form of slavery.
True.
It's arguably true of you.
And technically, there is still slavery. Not technically. There is literally still slavery being practiced in some countries in Africa. Like legit Africans selling other Africans, but we don't ever talk about that. Why don't we ever talk about that? We always talk about reparations for black people. Why don't we talk about, well, how did the slaves get here? That seems to be like these people's like crux. Like they never mention that. That's never part of the discussion, because we don't want to seem like our own people were involved in this slave trade, even though we know for a fact that the Africans didn't just get on boats and decided to come here and got enslaved when they showed up at the shores of the United States. The white Europeans didn't actually get off the boats in Africa and go and hunt down Africans to turn into slaves. So they had to have gotten on the boat somehow, but it's always conveniently forgotten how the slave trade was actually done. It's only white people and white people's fault, because no one else ever practiced slavery. No one else ever practiced colonization Only white people ever did that shit. Sarcasm, by the way, if you didn't catch the tone.
You look at the history, and if you look at what the black people were doing to other black people back in that time, because the white people got them from somewhere, and a lot of black people were selling them.
But every white person who
And
is
they're
alive
still selling
today
them today.
is still benefiting from the transatlantic slave trade and chattel slavery, and every
How so?
black person who is alive today is still being negatively impacted by the legacy of the transatlantic slave trade and
How so?
chattel slavery. It's not giving away free money
Wait,
to
how
people
so?
based on their race.
Tell
it's
me
an
how.
overdue debt that has been owed for hundreds of years that
But
has
tell
yet
me how.
to be paid.
How am I
At what point does the group that was affected by this take responsibility for any of this? I'm actually curious to know at what point do they take responsibility for this? At what point do black people say, well, okay, now we have to look within our community. If the white man that we're calling racist won't give us money, right? Because you're calling them racist and they're benefiting from slavery to this day, apparently, won't give you money, won't give you reparations that you think you so deserve, why don't you go out and get it? Why is it that black people are literally the black people that are born here? I don't want to say every black person, right? Because there's black people from everywhere. The most successful group in the United States are Nigerian Americans. Like by the income level, they're like the most successful. They make even more than the Asians. Why is it that those people are able to come from a country like Nigeria and be the most successful people in this country, yet the black people that are born here that have been here for generations now can't seem to get out of the fucking trap? At what point do they take accountability for the things that they do as a community and say, we're not going to be part of this no more? Black people are literally the only group who acts like a victim in every situation, but then they're 13% of the population, and you're gonna call me a racist for pointing out FBI stats. 13% of the population commits 50% of the crime. At what point do we say, well, enough is enough? Now we got to clean up ourselves. We got to clean up our image and do better. Why is it that immigrants from other countries can come here first generation and do better than black people that were born here? Why is it that Hispanics come from other countries and after one generation, their kids are doing better than them and often doing better than the black people that were born here? Why is that? How come nobody ever asked those questions? And don't come to me about no race shit, because I know where I come from. I may not have been born here, but the difference between the slavery that happened in my country and the slavery that happened here was where the boat stopped. Because my country has history with slavery too. Dominicans were enslaved. The Taino people were enslaved. When they started dying off, guess what Christopher Columbus did? He brought in slaves. And then they mixed with Tainos and the Spaniards, and that's how you get the wide range of colors that you get in Dominican Republic. You know what the difference between Dominicans and black Americans? We actually fought for our independence. We actually, well, yes, you guys marched. You guys did do something to gain your civil rights, not saying that you didn't. But after the Spaniard left, the Haitians also took over the country. And guess what we did? We fought them off too. And we never let our past define who we were as a people or as a country. You don't hear Dominicans bitching to Spain about wanting reparations for the slavery that happened hundreds of years ago. No, nobody owes you that money. Nobody owes you anything because you weren't in it. You were not a slave, and the people currently today aren't slaves. And what happens to people like me? So I'm assuming they're gonna take this from taxpayer dollars, right? What happens to people like me? Why do I have to pay for something that I had no part in? Let's forget about the white people, right? Let's forget about the white people. My family isn't from here, but I pay taxes every year. So does that mean that my taxes need to go towards your reparations, even though I had nothing to do with it? Even though millions of Americans, let's say we're just solely going to put the blame on white people, but taxes are collected from everybody. So does everybody, even the people that had no involvement in slavery, have to pay for it? How does that work? I don't get it.
Other cultures did not have chattel slavery, where people were born into slavery in perpetuity with no way to get out of it and by no fault of their own, and then terrorized. It's not only about chattel slavery, it's also about the white supremacist domestic terrorism against black people that has been happening for hundreds of years, and it's still happening. It's still happening today.
But how does that affect me?
Reparations are for chattel slavery, yes, and also for the government-sanctioned violence, displacement, dehumanization, criminalization, and marginalization of black people ever since chattel slavery ended.
Okay.
Period. Good. Chattel slavery.
If modern-day white Americans truly benefit from the fact that slavery existed over 150 years ago, then so do modern-day black Americans. So do Americans of every color, because the freedom, the prosperity, the benefits, the rights associated with living in this nation in the modern era extend to all Americans, not just the white ones. If you really believe that slaves built this nation, well, we all benefit from living in this nation.
That's another one I fucking hate. That's another one I hate. That black people built this country or that slaves built this country. That's not true. How can slaves or black people have built this country if skyscrapers are not made out of cotton? And last I checked, slavery was really big in the South, not everywhere else. There was plenty of states that did not have slavery. A lot of them in the North. So did the slaves build that too? Did black people build that too? What happened when slavery was over? Did we just stop building? Or do we conveniently forget about all the groups of people that had something to do with building America for the sake of saying that only black people or slaves built this country? Which is an insane, it's fucking insane on its face. And I can't believe that there are actual people who actually say that. That shit is crazy to me.
And in the modern era, so I guess we all owe them a debt of gratitude. You are better off living in the modern day U.S. than you are in most parts of the world. You're better off living in the modern day U.S. than you are in most parts of Africa, which brings me to the fact that yes, other cultures did, and in fact still do, have chattel slavery. But you know, almost 60% of Americans today can't afford a $1,000 emergency. Your entire premise is predicated on the false notion that all whites or most whites have all this generational wealth that's been passed on to them from their ancestors, who of course were all slave owners. You're ignorant, you're uninformed, you're sitting in your cushy house demanding money from people who owe you nothing.
Oh, okay, that was great. Great informative stuff. Couple questions. How, why, and are you ignoring the slavery that's still going on in the year 2024? I know
because
reparations are this idea that a lot of people who claim
black
to be
people enslaving
for the people
other black
are always
people
talking about. And in some conversations, I could walk with you a little bit, especially when you're seeing all this money going to Ukraine and all the illegal immigrants, and you sit there and wonder to yourself,
Yeah, that shit is wild, man. We have homeless people. We have people fucked up here in America going through some crazy shit. And these governments, or our government, decided that it's better to give actual debit cards to illegal immigrants in New York of $10,000 to do as they please with. That's an actual thing that's actually happening. Look it up. If you're an illegal immigrant and you go to New York City, you can get a debit card for $10,000.
How comes no one's giving any money out to the black people for all the pain that they had to deal with back in the day 400 years ago? I would argue that it would stand to reason you're not going to see that money. And based on what you described, woman, you are not really going to see a change in anything because your reasoning is people are still suffering and people are still profiting, but giving that money away, no matter how much money.
Yeah, and how does, okay, what changes? Okay, you get the money, then what? What changes? Are you gonna, in another 200 years, 400 years, whatever, you're gonna demand more money because the system hasn't changed? Because that's what it leads to. Okay, you get the money, then what happens? The system is still in place. The system is still the same. All they did was give you money out of my pocket when I had nothing to do with slavery. So then what? Nothing. Absolutely nothing changes. And then in a couple hundred years, we're going to come back with the same argument that they're still fucking oppressed, even though they have more opportunity here than anywhere else in the world to become something. These are people that have never left the country, that think that America is deeply racist, that have never been outside of the United States. Never. And don't know how racist other places can truly be.
It is really isn't gonna make anything go away. It's just gonna put money in your pocket. Now, what you do with that money is a completely different subject because somebody could be dumb enough to believe that, hey, I just got $100,000 from the government and racism has completely gone away. And that would be a stupid thing for anybody to say. But if you're gonna go the route of trying to say that people are benefiting and people are suffering, you need to explain how instead of just saying we are. Because when you don't explain how, you leave more questions left unanswered. And sadly, you, madam, even though you are a very bodacious and beautiful and stylish individual, you did a very poor job trying to stick up for reparations and why they're needed. And can I just say, there are white people who hear this and see this and they have their take on it. And you could either agree or disagree. And my stance is simply this. You will have to at least understand that some people will not handle that money greatly. And you could say it doesn't matter. They paid or got paid the due for all the bigotry that never happened to them because while you were tweeting from an iPhone and making TikTok videos, the people you're talking about are in the ground dead. So the actual benefiters of such a thing will never get to see that in any form whatsoever.
White people living today don't owe black people any type of reparations in any way, shape, or form. At no point anyone living today who is black has anything to do with what happened 400 years ago.
Correct.
More than likely, you don't have any relatives living today that had anything to do with it as well.
Correct.
And that same thing goes for white people. Not a single person who is
Correct.
white living today has a thing to do with what happened 400 years ago. If you are black
Correct.
and you somehow trace it down that you are related to slaves, congratulations. You won a prize of absolutely nothing, because there were, in fact, white, black, Hispanic, and Asian slaves. And
Yes.
I did say there were.
Everything in between. Literally, world history has been largely about conquest. This relative peace that we live in right now, it's a totally new concept. It wasn't something that was done before. People lived and died by the sword. Genghis Khan was one of the greatest conquerors of his time, if not the greatest, and he was Asian. Everyone, every single group at one point or another practiced colonization and conquering other people. It was the norm. Here's one thing. Throughout history, slavery was also the norm. The Aztecs would capture prisoners, make slaves, and do human sacrifices, right, for example. But they also kept slaves. And slaves were seen as a morally justifiable thing. But you know who were the first people to abolish slavery? White people. But they never want to talk about that. They want to talk about how white people are evil for slavery, but they don't ever mention other groups that practiced it. And they never mentioned the fact that up until white people said it was bad, everybody was doing it and nobody cared. And white people were the first to abolish it. And that's a fact.
For white slaves. Also, if you really want to apply the same logic that you want to charge all these white folks for as of today, take your ass over to Africa, right? Track your ancestry down, because you're going to find it deep in there. Find out the African that sold your ass, and then challenge him to a boxing match. And if you just so happen to be successful, when he hands over his donkey, the little mud hut in the corner, his collection of spears and shit, then you got your reparations. But if you're looking for reparations out of America, good luck. These white folks don't owe you shit.
And you just want some money in your pocket, or you could come to the realization that everything won't change because you got money in your pocket. You could give me $3 million, I'll live a little bit of luxury, but
Most people are shit as fuck with their money anyways. They're economically illiterate and they don't know how to handle finances well. That's something that I'm still actively working on. I've gotten better over the years. I'm a lot better at saving now, and I set goals for myself, and I do really well with my money. I try to budget and I try to watch what I spend every month. But most people aren't. Most people, you're gonna give them $100,000. Let's say that's the magical number they come up with, $100,000 for each African American or black person. I don't even want to say that. Let's say that's the number they come up with. Within a couple of, most of them will be broke. They won't have anything because they'll spend it on stupid shit that they don't need. And that's the actual reality. That's exactly what will happen, because that's exactly what happens every time most people win the lottery. Most people, winning the lottery is actually a very unlucky thing. If you win the lottery, you are more than likely to end up bankrupt, because most people that win the lottery aren't even good with money, so they end up blowing it in a year, 2 years. Imagine winning $100 million and you blow it in 2 years because you don't know how to manage it. Or they end up dead. People kill them because they find out they have money. They start getting harassed by other people because they find out they got money. So that's another thing that actually comes into play. What do you think is going to happen when everybody gets reparations? Do you think that other black people aren't going to know that the government gave you money? There's going to be way more theft and way more crime and possibly families killing each other over the money. I guarantee it.
But it won't erase any situation going on at any given time to where somebody could get on TikTok and say it's racist. It won't stop any hate crime. It won't stop any racial discrimination. It won't stop this reverse racism that you claim doesn't exist, because you don't have the power to be racist, but you have the power to beg and also segregate as you see fit given the situation. But no, you don't have the power to be racist because it's institutionalized. But I would need people to understand greatly that the topic of reparations needs to be a conversation that is not this stupid and actually something people could tend to understand, because in case anybody doesn't know, there are ways reparation is being talked about for the black people, but it's only for specific black people. So if you don't make the cut, guess what? You're not going to be one of the people getting money potentially, and that could fuck up even more people believing in the people, because if there's one thing a lot of people enjoy, it's money. And when they see other people getting money, even though they might not fit the category, it'll leave a sour taste in their mouth. It'll leave them thinking, I deserve that money. I want your money. Give me your money. And then that's an unintended consequence you didn't think about because you're so focused on demonizing the white guy, you're not seeing the bigger picture. You're just looking at a small pixelated version of it and thinking you know everything.
Do you support reparations for American descendants of slaves?
How can you possibly justify taking money through force taxation from someone today who was never a slaver, whose families were never slavers, who has never been involved in slavery in any way, and giving it to someone today who was never a slave, who has never been a slave, whose parents weren't slaves, whose grandparents weren't slaves? None of that is to diminish the horror of slavery, but to say that reparations is a nutso solution.
Did America benefit from slavery?
I didn't.
But did America's history benefit from slavery?
I mean, no.
All right, so I'm going to ask this very, very, very directly. It's a very way for this.
No, you know who benefited from slavery? It wasn't America as a country. Slavery wasn't practiced all over America. And not every white person had a slave in the country, even where it was practiced. You know who benefited from slavery? The slave owners. Those were the only people who benefited directly from slavery. Now, if you want to make the argument that maybe we should trace back the white people who are descendants of those slave owners and you want to do reparations that way, maybe. Probably not. But no one else but the slave owners benefited from it.
Did your parents receive anything from the New Deal, and specifically Social Security?
Perhaps not yet. They probably will.
So
perhaps
you don't.
Social Security.
Yeah. American descendants of slaves were excluded from Social Security as a means of public policy. So when you look at the position that American descendants of slaves are in, that's generational poverty. So you're going to have to be very explicit about the reason why you're doing this thing. We have to recognize the assets were taken from American descendants of slaves, and it's the federal government's job to redress them.
Hundreds of years ago,
What
I would have supported that at the
assets?
time.
At the time we're talking
What
about the
assets?
80s.
What assets were taken from them? Except that they were forced to work for no pay. There was no actual assets taken from people who had nothing. What assets?
My friend,
We're talking about slavery.
We're talking about as recent as no. Let's not do that. If we stay on slavery, we're gonna be stuck there forever. It's slavery that led to Jim Crow, that led to redlining, that led to the war on poverty, that led to the war on drugs, that led to the situations that even your partner cited.
Yeah, and
that's the government's job.
But
That's
you
the
want to
government's
respond
job.
to that today by discriminating again on the basis of race,
No. It's a
reinforcing the
social-
divides.
It's
Again, instead of, I mean, we can't go back and change the past. We have to move forward without reinforcing divides, without discriminating on the basis of race, without taking from one group to give to another. We have to move forward for equality for all, and not try to look backward and do all that.
But let me know, are you for reparations?
No.
Are you against reparations?
No,
Are you
Leon.
considering reparations? Are you
No,
thinking
Leon.
about reparations being
No,
a good
Leon.
idea? Or do you realize that no matter what, nothing's really going to change? People just want a little bit of extra money. And there's nothing wrong.
No. Reparations is stupid because I shouldn't have to pay for something that I had no part in, and neither did any of these people. But anyways, that's all I got for this video. It was a long one. I know it was kind of passionate and it was rant filled, but yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification, and follow me on social media and join the Discord. All the links are in the description down below. I will see you guys in the next video.